In this video, we'll share a few helpful tips for leading meetings and generating discussion. We'll also show you how to bring REbeL's meeting topics to life by showing footage of an actual REbeL meeting. REbeL's meeting topics serve as the guide to lead your meetings, like a lesson plan. Each has three important components: education, exploration and discussion, and action. These components align with our mission to not only create safe spaces for teens to learn and dialogue about issues, but also to empower them to take this a step further, either continuing to explore a particular topic outside of the REbeL meeting, or becoming agents of change in their schools and communities. Many of our meeting topics are accompanied with supplemental materials that can be utilized during the meeting or as part of an action plan. We have devised one or more action plans to go along with each topic. We encourage you to also empower your members to brainstorm and come up with other activism ideas and innovative solutions to issues. All meeting topics can be adjusted as needed. REbeL meetings are often led by chapter sponsors, but as student leaders start to emerge, involve them in the meeting planning and facilitation with the intent of co-leading meetings with you. Have your members face each other during meetings, in a circle in desks, like we see here, at a large table, or on the floor. Do your members know each other? Do they feel comfortable sharing? REbeL should feel safe. If your members feel comfortable with one another, they'll be more likely to open up. When you're starting your chapter, and any time there's an influx of new members, it's important to focus the first few minutes of each meeting on get-to-know-you activities. This increases members' level of comfort as part of the group and leads to greater group cohesion, which will translate to more overall engagement in REbeL. Here are some tips to generate in-depth discussions using REbeL's meeting topics as a guide. 1. Pause for at least 5 seconds after asking a discussion question. This gives students a chance to formulate answers. 2. Minimize yes or no questions. Open-ended questions tend to yield more discussion. 3. Try rephrasing questions if you get blank stares. 4. Provide an example of how you might respond or a personal anecdote. 5. Some chapter sponsors opt to project discussion questions on a screen or hand out a list of questions, asking members to jot down their thoughts before sharing as a group. For larger groups, we often divide members into smaller groups and then rejoin for discussion as a larger group at the end. Next, we're going to show you a REbeL meeting in action to give you a sense of how to bring a REbeL meeting topic from our curriculum to life and to lead a discussion. This meeting was filmed from start to finish. You'll see the aforementioned tips incorporated throughout. Feel free to watch the meeting in its entirety or to watch a clip here and there. If you have questions about how to lead a REbeL meeting, please don't hesitate to reach out to the program director via email or via the Contact Us button in the programming portal.
So today we're going to talk about mindful eating. Tell me what you know about mindful eating first. We've talked about it a little bit maybe at various points in REbeL. Go ahead.
No.
Okay, go.
It's like eating things like in moderation rather than like dieting or something like that. Like just being mindful of what you're putting in your body, and like you can eat something like bad or junk food, just to eat in moderation and mindful of balance.
Okay, you know that?
Well, that's pretty much what I was gonna say.
Okay.
And you shouldn't feel bad for eating something that, is considered like unhealthy if you only eat it once in a while. Like you shouldn't feel bad about it. You
Okay.
go on a diet after that.
Mm-hmm. And so those are elements that we teach in mindful eating. And a lot of that sounds like removing guilt from the eating process and eating everything in moderation. And that's an element of mindful eating, but mindful eating itself, think of mindfulness. What do you do when you're being mindful? You're paying attention. It's a very intentional process, like in yoga. So mindful eating is the process of eating with intention, paying attention to your body and what your body is telling you, and just in general paying attention to the eating process, and really tuning into the experience. And the value in that is helping us connect with our bodies and put our bodies back into the driver's seat in terms of dictating when, why, and how much we eat. And that is ultimately a better way to live in our bodies than to live in this perpetual diet mentality dictated by external rules, like eat this, not that, eat X grams of protein, et cetera, which we know we're flooded with constantly. So what I want to do today is take you through kind of an exaggerated mindful eating exercise. Have you guys ever done this? Have we done this before?
I don't think so.
Okay. So, let's see. Okay, so first I'm going to have you sit up straight. Whatever comfortable position. Get yourself comfy. Hands on your lap. Close your eyes. Take 3 deep breaths. Okay, so keeping your eyes closed, check in with your body. Take note of how hungry you are or not. No judgment. Just observe what you're feeling in your body at this moment. Okay. Open your eyes, and we're going to hand out M&Ms. But you're not going to eat them. So first, hold them in your hand. It's kind of hot in here, so like let them breathe, or they will melt all over you. Let's take 3 each. Okay, so pick up one of them. Look at it. Really hard. Examine its angles like you've never seen it before. Note the color, the shape, how it feels in your hand. Think about what you notice about the texture. Okay, now bring it to your nose and smell it. Take note of what you experience. If you can smell it, maybe not. It's so small, so it might be kind of hard to smell. That's an observation in and of itself. Okay, bring the food up to your lips. Bring the M&M up. Pause. You notice anything happening physically? Maybe not. Just observe. Okay, so put the M&M in your mouth. Don't bite it though. Just leave it there. Okay? Move it around in your mouth. Notice the way that it feels. Notice the flavors. Notice how the texture changes. Notice how it changes as it moves around your mouth. Notice any sensations that you experience. And slowly take a bite. Notice any urges to eat it more quickly. Maybe taking note of how this might differ from the way that you normally eat. As you're chewing, chew slowly. Pay attention to the way that the flavor and the texture continues to change. And swallow if you haven't already. And then as you do so, try to sort of picture the food as it's moving down into your stomach. Take note of anything that you experience, sensations, anything. Take note of when you find yourself wanting more. And then I want you to repeat this with the next 2. With that really slow, intentional experience of the M&M. About this activity.
It was like, no, okay, go. It was like really hard, because usually I don't think about it that much.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean like, when I eat chocolate, like I like taking my time to eat it. Like I don't really like love biting into it and just like quickly, but at the same time, like it was weird to pay so much attention to like one by one just eating the M&M. Yeah, I don't know, it was weird.
It's kind of weird to like look at it first too, because I don't really like look at the food. I mean, you kind of just like put it, like I mean, if I'm like sitting at like a table and I have like food in front of me, but if I'm like, I don't like look at the food and like examine it.
Right.
was gonna say, when you told us to eat the second one, I just like shoved it in my mouth, and Jessica was like, you have to look at it. So I like take it out, and I was like looking at it. But yeah, I just wanted to like eat the next one.
Yeah. Well, so what would we normally do when it comes to M&Ms? What would be kind of the normal way of eating them? Yeah.
Don't let them like sit in my mouth. I just like chew.
Yeah, so that's quite a difference. So what stands out to you about the dichotomy between what we normally do and the process of, although this is really exaggerated, the mindful eating process? What can you see as being maybe a negative aspect of not experiencing food in such an intentional way?
It makes you like eat a lot more of it if you're not really watching or like examining it. Like I remember I went to like it was for like the leadership team for REbeL like last year at the CAPS building.
Yeah.
And they gave us Chick-fil-A cookies and we ate them really slowly. And they remind me of that because you taste a lot more if you're paying attention.
Uh-huh. Would you say you enjoy it more when you taste more?
I have more patience.
Because I mean, like, there's no like big difference between putting like one in your mouth or 5. You just kind of like.
In terms of the taste?
Yeah, I mean, like,
Uh-huh.
you're tasting it either way. You just kind of like are trying to just take a few because the one seems so small. But yeah.
I think it's also interesting that like usually I would probably need like 3 handfuls or something to taste as much and feel as satisfied as I did just eating 3.
Yeah, that's a really common experience with this type of activity, is feeling satisfied in terms of that kind of sweet tooth, like feeling like that's satisfied with a smaller amount. Which isn't so much based on the amount, but based on like the intentional experience of it is what gives you that sort of sense of satisfaction. How did you guys feel? Did you guys feel hunger before we started when I had you kind of tune in? Nobody was really that hungry.
I mean, we were eating snacks.
Yeah.
But at the same time.
True.
I was looking forward to eating chocolate for sure. I was excited about it.
What things did you notice about the M&M when it was in your mouth that you might not have picked up on before? Anything new?
It was cold.
It was cold?
Yeah.
Okay.
I noticed how much it actually tasted like candy. It wasn't just chocolate, like the outer shell was like really pleasant
Uh-huh.
and it was just sweeter than it usually is.
So the outer shell might not be something you really hone in on very
Yeah.
often because it's,
Straight from chocolate.
yeah, straight to chocolate. One thing I notice when I eat M&Ms really slowly like this is like the graininess too, a little bit, that I don't always pick up on when I eat them quickly, because my mouth doesn't have a whole lot of time to kind of process that experience. Any judgments that you guys were tempted to make about the food?
What do you mean?
Yeah, what do you mean?
Judgments like M&M. What category might you put an M&M in terms of good or bad, healthy or unhealthy?
Junk food.
Okay.
Junk
So
food.
did you,
Junk food, yeah.
so did you find yourself? Did you notice any of those judgments coming up for you during that process?
I mean, it seems like it's chocolate, so like it seems like something that I like would eat on special occasion, like kind of like moderately. Like it didn't seem like a I don't know how to like describe what it was, but it was like something that like I shouldn't be eating it so often. I mean, I was eating 3 of them, but like it was like the thing was like I shouldn't be eating more than what I have. I don't know. Something like that. I can't put into words.
My sister-in-law has a son who's 4 years old, and when I spent like a week with him over spring break, and I heard her talking to her son, and he was asking for popcorn, and it was at like 8:30, which is past his bedtime, and she wanted to tell him no, but she's really careful about, you know, not saying anything bad food or good food, and so what she said is, well, popcorn's a sometimes food. And I thought that was a really interesting way of putting it.
So like sometimes foods. No, it was interesting.
Yeah, I think that's what you're getting at. You see
Yeah,
things
that's
like
what
that.
it made me think
that's,
of.
That's what I was,
Yeah.
that's what it was.
Anybody else? Any thoughts that came up about food itself?
Well, when you're doing it like one by one, like, I don't know, you're more conscious about like, oh, you know, maybe this isn't such a great like thing you're putting into your body. And like, I mean, I love chocolate. Like, obviously I'm still gonna eat chocolate, but somehow when you eat like more of it at a time, it just doesn't like faze you as much. But when you're like forced to think about it like going down, you're like,
It like tasted the same as like a handful.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, I feel better. Like it was only 3.
Yeah.
Instead of like this handful, so it's like I'm not getting as much like bad stuff that I would if I got.
Okay. So you had the conscious experience, maybe even kind of a subconscious experience of like, I'm being good
Yeah.
because I'm only having 3. Does that make sense? I would say that that's probably a pretty common experience with this, given the food. Now, if it had been something else like grapes, which we sometimes do with these types of activities, probably wouldn't have had some of those same judgments.
yeah.
This is just something to observe.
Which is interesting, because grapes are sweet, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so it's interesting, like, why we've categorized one as so good and one as so bad.
Well, yeah, that's what I've like been thinking about lately. Like, honestly, if you gave me the option between fruit or like something not healthy, I would probably choose like the non-healthy dessert. But honestly, I love fruit. Like, I get just as much enjoyment out of eating fruit, but like convincing myself to take the fruit over the like non-healthy thing is the harder part.
What is hard about that part? Like,
Well, I don't know. I think it's just like ingrained into like almost everyone's mind that that's better. Like fruit is healthy, and so when you hear the word healthy, you're like, no, but like I'm feeling junk food. I don't know, like
so you're saying you're trying to actively not necessarily always choose the healthy option?
I'm not trying to not choose the healthy option. I'm saying if I were given the option, like just my mind like always craves the non-healthy.
Got it.
Even though I would get just as much satisfaction eating.
Do you like
The
feel
healthy
bad when you like take the unhealthy food, or do you like
I mean-
feel like it's like this?
Do you feel like healthy's not gonna taste as good?
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
No, like, I'm saying that I know that it would. It's just,
Well, but when you think about it, you're like, oh, I want something sweet. Like, you don't think like, oh, let me go get like some grapes. You're like, oh, let me go like get some
you just,
whatever.
because they're more marked as like comfort, like foods or whatever, and like they're more marked as giving you more satisfaction. I mean, obviously sometimes I would actually choose the fruit over the junk food, but like, I don't know, I just,
That's really interesting though, because like when it comes to ice cream, I am lactose intolerant, guys, and whenever I'm sad or like, or just want to have like a girls' night and I want to watch a movie with some girls, I'm always like, oh yeah, bring the ice cream on, because like I feel like a lot of movies and TV shows, I'm like, that's the comfort food, like you said,
Yeah.
like that's what you're supposed to go to, and you're allowed to go to that when you're feeling like you want to have just like a girls' night, and you get to eat the entire thing and that kind of thing, and so it almost makes you like skip mindful and you go to it's okay because other people do this too. That's interesting.
yeah, I just think it's like, almost like what you see other people doing, and so you like, I don't know, it's like in your mind, and so you do it too.
It's like culturalization.
Yeah.
I mean,
Even though ice cream is not healthy for me.
Yeah.
I should
It's
not.
such
I
an
mean-
occasion thing
Yeah,
we were
being
talking
lactose
about.
intolerant. Yeah.
Yeah, like if I would have like cake, like it's usually on like birthdays or like anniversaries. So like if I went home right now and just like ate some cake, it'd be like, well, like why am I doing this? It's not like a special occasion.
mhm.
I think I'm super dependent on the time of the day. Like I never crave candy or chocolate or anything in the morning, which is weird. Like I don't know why. Like why is it? I don't know.
It's a weird habit.
Yeah.
But have you ever had chocolate in the morning?
Yes.
What's that experience like? Is it kind of weird? Like,
Yeah.
oh, this is
Like
I
it
should
doesn't
be having
always
this.
taste I feel like it doesn't taste as good.
Yeah.
I don't know
It's
why.
like when
I
it
feel
works for a
that.
while.
It doesn't feel like it does. I'm not.
Why might that be?
I don't know. I have no idea.
Because if nothing has changed about the food, then you can argue that the only variable that's
Your
shifting
perception.
is your perception of the food.
Yeah.
And perhaps sort of this like mental block that I'm not supposed to have chocolate.
I'm not supposed to have it in the morning. Yeah.
Which is really interesting. I think what you're all describing is the culturally driven labels that we apply to food and the emotional experience that surrounds food that is taught. So how do you guys feel about the statement, food is fuel?
I don't know, I feel like it's a lot more different when it comes to perceptions of food than it's like guys versus girls. It's like a lot of these things I'm like, what?
Because you don't think this much about it?
Not that I don't think this much about it, but I can't necessarily relate to much of what you guys have said.
Okay.
So what's your experience with food and like how you perceive, or do you just not think about it?
I do think about it, but I just don't think about it as much or as often. Because I do like, oh, I gotta get some protein. I eat like a couple chicken breasts. But then,
Oh.
Just some mush of breast.
well, because we were talking about like eating chocolate in the morning, like other times where I've woken up.
Devin Bridgers, please come to the front office. Devin Bridgers, please come to the front office.
Like barbecue for like after I wake up.
Okay.
I'm just like, alright, whatever.
And no judgment whatsoever, it's just it is, you're just having.
There were times where I'd wake up, well, like in the summer I'd wake up at like 2 or 3 in the afternoon and be like, what's for lunch? Oh, okay, barbecue, cool. But, I mean, it's hard to, I don't know, sorry.
No, that's fine.
So it sounds like you're saying you don't have as many judgments and associations with food.
I'd say that, yeah.
Okay.
I think a lot of, at least my guy friends, are like, I'm not trying to make this like an every guy thing, but they're really focused on eating more food.
More.
And so like, maybe if they perceive themselves as skinnier than like what their ideal weight would be, they really like are constantly eating, constantly wanting to like eat more, I wouldn't say unhealthy, but just like gain that weight back. And so I think it's really different in that case for guys and girls, because mostly you see girls kind of thinking, I want to eat maybe less, maybe not even in an unhealthy way, but just, I don't know, I feel like,
The pressure feels different.
yeah, on both sides.
Because the goals are inherently different.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
So
there's
different
pressure on
between
both
the-
sides,
yeah,
for
for
sure.
Mhm.
Just different types of pressure.
When I was in high school, middle school, growing up in my house, I remember every time my brother would have friends over, my mom would just like shower them with food. Like she'd just like shove it all out. Like, here I make cookies and brownies and all that. And just has made statements in the past that like she liked it when like hungry guys were there because like they ate all her food. And like looking back on that now, it's interesting to think about how stereotypical it is that, oh, well, guys will eat all this food and girls, oh, they probably don't want as much. Like, that's probably not the case. And I'm like, that's not the case.
Well,
That is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, I've done like complete polar opposites because I've fasted for days and I've also ate to the point where I thought my stomach was going to explode. Like, literally, I ate, this burger was like this tall and like this big around, and there was like a pound of like steak fries, and I ate that in one sitting. And
Where
then
did
I
you
had
find that?
Was it just for fun?
in Louisiana. No,
Oh, okay.
no. In Kentucky. In Kentucky. It was in Kentucky. And
Was it like a competition-based thing? Like, I need to eat the whole thing?
Yeah.
Yes.
Got it.
I wanted to get that T-shirt, right?
Okay. Makes more sense.
But like, I don't know where I was going with that. So. What were you talking about? Maybe I can get back to track.
She was talking about the difference between the way that food is sort of pushed on guys, is this assumption that they're going to eat all the food in sight, and with girls, we sort of always assume that they're going to not eat very much.
Okay. Well, like after I ate that, I felt really bad. Not well because I eaten that, so I just felt sick. And I just thought, don't eat that much food again. But and like there are times where I'll go over to a friend's house and like I'll feel bad because I'll be like, hey, do you want to go get something to eat because I'm hungry, and they'll be like, yeah, sure, let's go, and then I'll get like 2 quesadillas at Taco Bell and they'll get a quesadilla. And I'm like, well, now I feel bad because I wanted more than you did. Yeah, I mean, there are times where I'm at home and I'll like get out a box of cheeses, so I'm like, just in case. But I'm like, but yeah, I think about it and I'm like, well, am I hungry or am I just bored?
Yeah.
And just like wanting something to do while I'm watching Netflix.
I think that's a really good point. I mean, so I would say probably most of us eat when we're not hungry.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so what are some of the reasons we eat other than hunger?
Stress.
Stress, boredom, like we said.
I find that I eat the most right when I get home from school. Like, I'm very, very good about my portions and what I eat until I get home from school.
Yeah.
And then I go into my kitchen and like, I start pulling out like all this junk food. And it's so bad because again, like I'm thinking, you know what, like fruit would be like a really good option right now, but something tells me, I'm like, I just had a really hard day. I'm gonna like eat this because it'll make me feel better, and it doesn't. I don't know.
But there's the emotional association. I also want to point out, I was listening very carefully at your verbiage. You used the word good to describe the way that you portioned throughout the day. And also sort of in reference to the types of food that you'd eaten throughout the day. And then you used the word bad to describe sort of this like, sounds like a kind of a binging process.
Yeah,
which is just really interesting, like no judgment, but that's really common.
Yeah.
For us to label in that way.
Even if it's not outwardly labeling, but just like how you internalize.
And that idea is so ingrained
in
our culture.
I think I eat the most in social settings because I think we talk a lot about, oh, I can eat like so much, you know, and it's almost like this competition of like, okay, no, I can eat like way more than you though, and so like especially when it comes to just like
Ended up with that burger.
it's like the pressure to like, you're like, no, I don't care about, you know, like portioning, so I'm gonna like eat more to show you that I'm like pretty chill and I don't care about that kind of stuff. And so
Interesting.
I think I fall into that a lot, especially at like parties when there's just like food sitting out and someone's standing over there and I want to talk to them and I'm like, well, I'm just gonna eat this food while I talk to you, and then like I eat the whole bowl and I'm like, okay, that's what happened. So.
But so I heard you say you don't want to appear that you have issues.
Yeah, care about like the watching it almost, because I think, I don't know, like I said, I think people are really interested and they're all like, oh, I watch Netflix like every hour of the day. It's kind of that thing where you're so like over the top on something that people are like, that's so funny, like you eat so much food. Oh my
Got
gosh.
it.
I don't know. That's what goes on in my brain. So.
Okay.
Social settings, like actually though, if you think about it, like really do make you like eat more sometimes, because like, for instance, my friends will text me like, hey, do you want to hang out? And I'm like, sure. I might have just had lunch, and they're like, yeah, let's go get something to eat. And I'm like, okay. Because, you know, you want to hang out with them, and then you're like, well, why does this always involve food? But, like, it always somehow does. And so you don't want to say no to hanging out with them. And you also, like, don't want to say no to going wherever they want to go, because what if they're hungry and they want that food, so.
Is that common for girls? Is that something? Because it's different for, I don't know if Will can relate or not, but I feel it's different for guys, because there are times where guys are like, let's go to Twister, and I'm like, I'll go hang out with you, but I'm not getting anything because I'm not hungry.
So you don't feel pressure to eat whenever they're eating?
Right.
I always
totally do.
I always 100%. I don't want them to like feel bad because I'm like not eating there. Like when somebody like I was going out to dinner with somebody like a while ago, and I was like, oh, you want sushi? She's like, oh no, I'm not hungry. I'll just get some rice and you can have sushi. I'm like, oh, I don't want you to like have to watch me eat. Like if you've already like eaten, like I don't know, it just seems like it's you're if it's like switched, I don't wanna like make them feel bad because I'm not eating food when they are, like, I don't know.
So do you guys experience that sense of like needing to like take care of people's emotions? Kind of like that? That's kind of what it's like caretaking.
Yeah, that is what it is.
Is what that sounds like to me. Or does it not even phase you? Like you're eating, I'm not eating, it's not a thing, it's just what it
I
is.
mean, I don't feel like I've been in that situation. I feel like I'll like schedule like when I'm gonna go eat with my friends, so like we both know like we're eating.
Oh,
So,
so
like, I
it's
don't
never
really have-
like spur of the moment.
It's
Yeah,
not like a
I don't really
friend
have
that's
like a
super pants.
conflict.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
And at least for me, it seems like that's all I do when I hang out with friends. It's always like,
Yeah.
let's go get lunch, like let's go out to dinner, let's go get ice cream. And I'm like, all right, cool. So like sometimes I don't exactly plan like when I'm gonna be eating. So then it's like weird to not eat if someone else is eating.
Yeah.
Well, I think the truth is that food is really wrapped up in the cultural experience. And so much of, I mean, when I think of if my parents come to visit, we're sort of scheduling our weekend around meals. Which isn't necessarily, we don't want to say that it's a bad thing, it just is what it is. It's just interesting. We've been cultured to just have food around us at all times and for our lives to sort of revolve around food, which isn't necessarily the way that food is designed, right? So this idea that food is fuel is meant to fuel our bodies, and it gets, it's not that simple. The reality is it's not that simple, but the other reality is that it should be that simple. And that fact that it's not so simple and the emotions that we have wrapped around food and some of these judgments and all of that just makes it a lot more complicated. But if we were to kind of take a step back and purely just pay attention to our body, tune into our hunger and fullness signals, only eat when we're hungry, stop when we're full, really be intentional about the eating process, it can take away a lot of that judgment. But we live in a culture where it's really hard to separate from that. So one thing I want to pass out to you guys is this mindful eating contract. I'm going to pass them this way and this way. Once everybody has it, I'm going to kind of go around and have everybody read one of the statements. I'm just going to talk through it. It's kind of an interesting thing.
I agree to be more aware of how I talk about food, my body, and weight.
We're going to cover this.
Okay.
Yeah.
I agree to try to speak positively about my body rather than criticize or judge my body like a trophy. This means practicing accepting compliments and appreciating my uniqueness.
I agree not to participate in fat talk or bond over diet discussions.
I agree not to criticize my own or anyone else's body.
I agree not to compliment people on their weight. Instead, will try to praise others for their characteristics or actions.
I agree not to participate in weightism or fatism, making negative judgments about overweight individuals, or thinism, judging thin people as good, more successful, or happier because they're thin.
I agree to avoid commenting on weight gain or loss.
I agree to talk about food positively rather than ruminating, obsessing, or discussing things like fat and carb content.
I agree to introduce healthier topics when people begin to talk about dieting, fat, and losing weight.
I agree not to tease other people about their weight or criticize the way they eat.
Almost made it all the way around. So, what do you guys think of all those after reading through?
I think I agreed to not, wait, which one was it? Oh yeah, not to compliment people on their weight and instead try to praise others for their characteristics or actions. I like that one a lot, but I'm also like confused by it a little bit. Just because I have a friend who, she's been like really hard like working out and like getting healthy and like being healthier, and it's not in like an unhealthy way, but she is looking like, not that she was not looking good before, but just like I want to compliment her on that, like
Because she's trying so
because
hard.
she's trying so hard and
Yeah.
she's like trying to eat healthy and like get her body like fit and stuff, and so like I guess, is that what this means? Like, don't compliment that, or like, I don't know.
That's a really good question, and I think this is kind of, I mean, these are all things that I would hope that we would strive for, and what we encourage you to strive for as part of REbeL to one, separate health from weight, but also to help separate self-worth from weight and appearance. But that's an instance where the inclination is to compliment her because she's trying so hard. But in complimenting her for those things, you're making a connection between how good she is, like as a person, and her size and her appearance, which in a way just, and this is very subtle, reinforces the fact that that's like an important way for her to receive compliments, rather than saying like, oh, you're like, I really respect the way you're just like going after your goal.
Yeah.
You're really determined. That would be a different way to compliment her. Because what happens if she stops receiving compliments about her appearance? And that becomes sort of a negative experience. Like nobody's commenting on her weight anymore. I'm trying to think of a couple of other examples. Well, with people that struggle with disordered eating and I'm trying to think of someone like a client that I worked with an eating disorder. Like if they get a compliment about their size, what am I trying to say here? I'm trying to think of like the experience of a larger person and a smaller person. For a smaller person, if they receive a compliment about how skinny they are, one, that person might be unhealthy. So the compliment about their thinness might reinforce this state of health for them that's unhealthy. So that gets kind of muddled. But it also might, if they're thin and they receive compliments and then they get larger, might be very, very healthy now, but at a larger size, at a body weight that's healthier for them, and they don't get compliments. That experience is a really negative one because they're sort of subtly perceiving thinness as good and as a way that I get compliments, and being heavier or larger, even if it's a healthier state, as bad. And so we make those sort of unconscious judgments about ourselves, about others based on those little comments. And so one even thing we tell parents is like, don't comment on a child's weight, because it creates this idea that that's an important part of who we are, and ultimately it's just not. Our size, our shape, those are aspects of who we are as people. We're human beings, we have a particular size or shape, but that in no way is the most important part about us. So we really want to think about complimenting people on other things, just so that that's not the very first thing that we're reinforcing is important about somebody. Because ultimately it's not. We would all probably agree that the most important part about ourselves and about others is not what we look like. But by commenting on appearance first, it's kind of a conflict there. We're kind of saying that is the most important thing, even if it's just the most salient thing. But still, we begin to just make those associations. So that means it's just complicated, all of this. Because so much of this stuff is our culture. This stuff is just like what we see all around us, this ruminating, obsessing about fat and carb content, worrying about our macronutrients, all of that.
One that stuck out to me was the bond over diet discussions. Because, I mean,
yeah, it's a thing.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Even guys, we talked about that in the guy panel. How you guys you might not necessarily use the word dieting, but you will talk about routines and remember that coming up.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I think that was something that I thought would be really hard for me to do, because I feel like that's something that me and my friends, it comes up every day.
I feel like it's a daily thing almost. It just like, subconsciously, I feel like we just talk about it, now that I think about it.
How so? Like, what types of things? Sorry.
So, we'll talk about like, for example, today one of my friends, he was telling me about what he was eating last night. So like, we'll talk about like what we're eating and stuff like that, because we think that we're trying to be healthy and stuff. Or we have goals, like we individually, we all have goals, and I feel like we eat to try to achieve those goals.
Like weight goals, or like athletic performance goals, or?
Yeah, any of those. It's different for everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you're right though, that it just, I mean, would you guys say that it's kind of a daily thing that you kind of comment on what you've been eating, or?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think for most of us it is. So it would be interesting, I would love to like have like imagery of someone's day, like my day, or the typical teenager's day, and how many times food comes up, or their weight comes up, and their shape comes up, and like take it out, like take those out like Photoshop, like you're taking out somebody's head out of like a group photo, and that would be a really cool thing to do to like represent how much time we spend focusing on these things that could be filled with so many other important things. So many other important things to talk about in life other than our weight, our size, health. And that would be a really hard thing to remove those because we exist in a culture where those are realities. So in not joining those conversations, you sort of alienate yourself unless you're actively trying to, put yourself in situations or surround yourself with people that don't necessarily focus on those things over other meaningful aspects of their lives. Or, you guys can all, take the platform of trying to actively create change by, we talked about this in the guys' field, just kind of stopping that conversation, what's happening, and shifting it to something else. Those are little ways that you can create change in all of this. Are there other things you guys can think of to act more in line with some of these things? Maybe some things that are realistic and some that just aren't realistic, but maybe little ways that you can try to plant seeds of change among peers. Maybe avoiding commenting on somebody's weight loss or weight gain is, I
think like the hardest part about that is usually like when people are trying to lose weight, like they look for assurance in others, and so what if someone asks you, you're not just gonna, it's rude to not say it, what if they're like, not that people ask like, oh, how do I look that often, but like somehow it always comes up and like you don't want to not say anything because then they just think you don't like how they look. And so it's like so hard, but at the same time I'm also not one of those people who love like giving people compliments when I know they're just like fishing for one. And so it's just hard.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I'm not like being nice if like someone is kind of like questioning it to me and then I like don't give them reassurance. It's really hard.
Right.
I don't know.
I think maybe like acknowledging like you've always looked great. Like you've always been beautiful in my eyes. You'll always be beautiful in my eyes, and that has to do with more than outer appearance. That has to do with like you're my friend and I love you. And so I don't know. That's what I always think about when I'm trying to compliment.
Well, yeah, or even saying like I haven't noticed because the things I notice about you. The appearance is just not the first thing that comes to mind. It's hard.
It's hard, especially because like it depends on how close you are with the person.
They can also see it maybe as you like avoiding, right?
Which
I mean you're kind of doing.
There's like no way this could be.
There's no way.
It's not a good sign.
What if you just deflected? What if you just deflected and said, I haven't noticed, and changed the conversation? Or saying, I haven't noticed, and like I want to talk to you about more than just weight, because I want, like, what can you say that can bring attention to the fact that you're actively maybe shifting the conversation? Like, let's talk about something else. Maybe there's a way to do that in a way that's not rude. Or maybe even why, like, I'm a part of this group called REbeL. We really try to shift from having so many conversations that focus on weight and diet, because there's so much more that we have to
I like that. Even just saying, I haven't really noticed, but I'm really trying to not talk about weight as much in my conversations, and I want to focus on other. Yeah, I like that.
So that's kind of almost like passing the blame a little bit. Like, I blame REbeL. But like, in a good way, but like, I'm part of this group and this is sort of what we're actively working toward. So that kind of gives you, I think, like an explanation for that shift. Maybe that's, I think it's hard though. So I think what I would challenge you to do is maybe think of ways that you can start to create those shifts in your conversations with others, but also in your conversations with yourselves. Just kind of like your inner dialogue, not that you're talking to yourself, maybe you do, and that's okay. But I think there's a lot of this stuff that happens internally also.
And it's not always going to go perfectly.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to say something wrong sometime, and it's okay. Like, you don't have to be perfect, you know?
Well, ultimately,
so don't kick yourself if you're like, oh, I shouldn't have said. Like, do you know what I mean?
It's hard, and I think that takes practice, and this is ultimately a really rebellious thing. That's why we call ourselves REbeL. I mean, this is anti-culture norms. This is like,
Yeah.
it's weird. It's weird for the average
And it's hard for people to
conversation.
Yeah, it's just some people like don't understand like what you're trying to say by like saying those things. Because it's not something people would normally say, and so then they like pick it apart and they're like, wait, what? Or like, was that a compliment? Were you just trying to say something? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, it's
It's
hard.
so weird. Yeah,
It is weird, but the alternative in keeping
yeah.
things the same isn't necessarily something we're fond of either. I mean, there's like, we could just keep things the way that they are, and disordered eating is going to continue to be an issue. People are going to continue to judge their own self-worth by the way that they look. They'll continue to fish for compliments because of their insecurities about their body. Or we can slowly try to insert shifts into our culture so that we slowly move to a healthier way to live in our bodies. And so that's kind of the idea, is just to find little ways to work these things into conversations so that our lives have become more than just about weight and appearance, and so that we can hopefully pass it on to other people even if in small ways.
That's good.